that we can take.
Okay, perfect, sir. So, friends, as you have heard, our honorable speaker has stated that it is better to have a queries in between, but after 1 hour. First, we'll cover most of the topic, then we have a query, and then the remaining topic will be covered. And then the last, we can have all the queries, whatever there will be. Again, I request all the participants to not to say hello, hi, or whatever through a chat. Let it be free only for query purpose. In the last, when you have been asked, then only please unmute yourself and state the query. Otherwise, it is requested to all the participants to please mute yourself and please control yourself. With these words, I welcome CA Satish Agarwal ji and sir, all is yours, sir.
Right, sir. Thank you, Kanwar Saab, for inviting me, and I feel happy to be part of the fraternity and hope that whatever my deliberation is, it will be useful, especially since there have been major amendments for searches which take place from 1st April 21 onwards. We'll cover that. Anyway, before I start, I would like to give a small introduction of the topic. Search seizure is one of the most serious actions which the department can take against an assessee. And as the name suggests, search means to seek, to find out, and seizure means to forcibly take possession. Now, the section 132 is the main section, which is a code in itself. And that section itself gives enormous power to the department to resort to search, and the validity of the search has been challenged, and it has been found to be constitutional way back in 60s. And therefore, I would not like to discuss that topic. Mercifully, there is no power of arrest with the assessing officer or the authorized officer. However, once the search starts, it is a continuous process till the time it ends, unless for a statement, a person wants to take some breather or the officer allows that. So with this introduction, I will start with the topic straight away. Now, section 132 of the Act, as I said, gives the power to the authorized officer who is authorized by the principal director. I am not going into the authorities because we are more concerned with the actual practical aspect of the search. Now, the words to be noted here are any of those officers has in possession information and has reason to believe. Now, that information which an officer has, he has to prepare a note, which now is not subject to scrutiny by anybody other than the High Court and the Supreme Court. All those cases where earlier tribunal used to go into the wires of the search, they are prohibited. Now only the High Court and Supreme Court can go into the search. Now section 132(1) clauses A, B, and C. These are the three relevant clauses which give the power to the assessing authorized officer to conduct a search. Now, what are these clauses? It is very relevant to understand. First clause is 32(1)(a), which says a summons has been issued under section 1 of section 37 of 1922, which is an old section. For the present 1961 section, two things are relevant. A notice under section 142(1) has been issued, or a summons has been issued, and the assessee has failed or omitted to respond to that, or paused to produce books of account, documents, or other items which are required by the officer. So this is one instance. Now, clause B, which is more important, is that the authorized person has a belief or a reason to believe that if such notice is issued or summons are issued, such person will not respond, and therefore he has to resort to the search. And the last clause is clause C. When the assessing officer has, authorized officer, I'm sorry, has information in his possession and he has reason to believe that there is certain money, bullion, jewelry, or other valuable article or thing, and such money, bullion, jewelry, or other article, valuable article or thing is represented by some property or income, which has not been, to this extent it is correct, which has not been, if they have any information or evidence, or which would not be disclosed for the purpose of the income tax. Now, here I would just like to take a pause. There are settled cases. The earlier case, which is a landmark case, is of Delhi High Court, Lala Ram Gupta. This is 194 ITR, in which the facts of the case were, it is very important to understand. In that case, the assessee was in receipt of 26 crore of compensation, and that was not taxable. The department had the information that he was in receipt of huge amount of compensation for which he had not filed the return of income. So the judgment was delivered by Delhi High Court that it was an illegal search because he was not required to disclose that in his income. It was exempt income. Similarly, there was a case of Dr. Nandlal Kahelani. This was again a case of Allahabad High Court. In this case, the reason for conducting the search was that the doctor has a roaring practice and he charges very high fees for operations. Now, these are vague informations, though there are very few cases in which the assessee has succeeded, but where there are such cases where there is no incriminating material and there is no availability of any document, but on gossip or mere hearsay, somebody has made a search warrant and then search the person or the assessee, then the search has been held to be illegal. There are no tests which are given by the courts. The courts have simply said that they will not go into the sufficiency of the reasons. Here again, there are a lot of judgments. I am not quoting judgments. Those two judgments I quoted because they are very relevant, that the information should not be vague. And at the same time, in those cases, no incriminating document was also found, which could suggest that there was concealment of income. So in those cases, search was held to be illegal. Now, these sections and subsections give enormous power to the assessing officer. In fact, so much so that he can search any vehicle, premises, building, and then section 132(1) also 1A, capital A, also gives the power to the. May I continue? There is some disturbance. So gives power to the authorized officer who is not the officer of that area, whosoever is authorized by the principal director or director to conduct a search and enter upon any building, vehicle, all those things which are mentioned. So these are not controversial things. The only thing is that once a search takes place, the authorized officer has the right to break open the lock if the keys are not available. Whereas in a survey, the authorized officer does not have the right to break open the lock. And in a survey, the survey can be conducted only during the office hours. That means a person can enter the premises for the survey only when the office hours are there and the premises are open. Unlike in a survey, the survey party cannot cover the residence. So here I would just like to caution the practical aspect of it is that in many cases we find that the residential address of the assessee is furnished in the tax return and in the PAN number. Now one has to be careful while giving that, because if that is the official address, then the survey party has every right to enter into that premises, and then by default those premises can be covered. Why I brought this topic here itself was because this is the distinction between survey, and now in a survey it is much difficult because the documents can be impounded, no doubt, no cash can be seized and nothing can be seized, but impounded documents, account books, etc., and copies can be taken, etc. We'll come to the procedure of assessment later on because it has also been completely overhauled. As you might be aware, the procedure under section 153A has been given complete go by, and with effect from searches which take place after 1/4/21, all assessments, wherever those provisions are applicable, are subject to amended provisions of section 148, which are quite harsh, complicated, and as yet untested. So I'll come to that in a later part because that also is very important. Now, when the authorized officer enters a premises, he has the right to search a person. That means he can do a search of the pocket of the person itself. If he has anything, he can break open the lock. In fact, if you are aware, we have seen the famous movie Raid, in which they had broken the walls also, where they reflected there were certain valuables which were hidden in the walls. So that much is the power of the officer. So one has to cooperate with the officer at the time of search, and at the same time, the officer has also to ensure that he gives the due respect to the assessee, and before the search is started, two panchas, as they are known, that is witnesses, are called upon from the area who have witnessed the search to ensure that no high-handed action is taken. There are instances of high-handed action, and certain officers have been suspended also. In case there is one case where one of the officers during a search slapped the employees, and a report was given to the police, and that officer was suspended. And I must share with you, a case is still going on in the court that against that officer. So at the same time, one has to cooperate. Now, the question of how to approach the officer when he starts the search. When he starts the search, he expects the cooperation, and all the provisions from 132(1) to 132(10) give him the authority to do the search in a manner where he can collect the information. He can call the police and take their help while conducting a search. Though it is very uncommon that people revolt or do violence with the search party, but there have been cases, in the case of MDLR Airlines, that was owned by a political person, where there was a violence on the search party. So the provision is already there that the police can accompany, and the officer has the right to take the escort of the police. Similarly, during the search, I'll come to the statement little bit later on. I'll just cover the minor procedural aspects. There is subsection 3, 132, which gives the power to the authorized officer to put on restraint certain items which can be seized, but it is not practicable at the relevant time to do that. For example, there may be jewelry which is of high quality, high quantity, or diamonds. He may not be able to have a valuer straight away. So, for the convenience, he may put that in an almirah and put that under restraint under section 132(3), or any documents or original title deeds of a property, etc., to facilitate later on the photocopy, etc. So, the restraint is valid for 60 days maximum as per subsection 132(8)(a). So anything which is put under restraint, normally a seal is put and the SSC is not allowed to take out that item or do anything with that till the time the restraint is lifted by the authorized officer. Now, question of statement. This I'll take little bit later on. This is 132(4) because the statement is a very important piece of evidence against the SSC, and how to approach the statement and how to answer the questions. This is a very difficult part because theorizing is very easy. A person who is subjected to search is normally a person who is subjected to search is legally not permitted to have the help of a counsel at the time of search. However, in certain cases, the counsels are permitted, but that is on the basis of the understanding with the search party. But legally, there is no right of the counsel that he should be allowed to be present with the SSC, and the statement is a very important piece. So therefore, I will come to it little bit later on. How to address a statement, what is the implication of the statement, and what is the consequences of retraction of a statement, and in what circumstances retraction is accepted or feasible, though it is becoming very difficult to accept the retraction. However, I'll come to that 132(4) little bit later on. So after that, 5, 6, and 7 have been omitted. And 132(4)(a), there is a presumption that whatever is found from the searched premises, that is any valuable article, thing, jewelry, books of account, loose papers, as per section 292(c), these are deemed or presumed to belong to the searched person. Though this presumption is rebuttable, it is difficult unless the searched person has evident documentary evidence or other support to claim that those jewelry, maybe it is kept with him by his daughter who is married or some other relative. All those things come into the picture. I'll just take those little bit later on. Otherwise, the normal presumption is that all the documents, etc., which are found from the search premises belong to the search person. Now, subsection 8, 8(a), 9, and 9(a). Now, all these are procedural. I have shortly covered them, and keeping in view the time, I will just make a passing mention. Subsection 8 is that the books of account or other documents, etc., which are seized shall not be retained by the assessing officer after the completion of assessment under 153A, etc. So this is hardly of any practical importance because this happens much later after the assessments, etc., is over. And subsection 8A, I have already covered while covering 132.3 that the restraint order under section 132.3 cannot be for more than 60 days. Now, a question can arise, can more than one restraint order be done? Meaning thereby, a restraint order under 132.3 is passed on 1st January and on 28th February or 1st March, it expires. So that restraint is lifted, let us say on 15th February, and can the officer again pass a restraint order, let us say on 16th February or maybe 18th February? The answer is no. That is the judicial precedents which already have clarified that restraint order is to overcome the practical difficulty that the authorized officer may find at the time of search. So therefore, it can be exercised only once. Now, the other question which is important is of lockers and the statement. Now, I'll come to the statement because statement, surrender letter, retraction, and the contents of the locker. These are the four practical aspects which we normally find, which we normally find hard to cope, partly because of the style of functioning of the search party and partly because of lack of proper awareness of the implication of the statement. Now I am coming to the statement first. Under section 132.4, the authorized officer is competent to take a statement on oath. Mind you, this is a statement on oath. In a survey, statement is not on oath. And the explanation to 132.4 provides that the statement can be used in evidence in the income tax proceedings against the searched person. Now, I will also here mention one more issue. Whatever information is collected by the department, even in case of illegal search, that material can be used against the assessee, notwithstanding that the search is held to be illegal. That was decided long ago in 1960s in the case of Seth brothers, Dr. Pratap Singh, etc. So this is incidental. I thought I should mention that. Now, in a statement, the preliminary statement that is taken by the search party is to know the name of the person, identity, Aadhaar card, all those things, PAN, how you filed the returns, have you filed the well tax returns, all those. Now, all those are preliminary questions which are easy to answer. And in case the assessee is not able to answer that at the relevant time, he can furnish those statement of assessable income or other things later on, and he can simply state that right now I don't have those in my possession and I will collect them from my counsel or my accountant as the case may be, and I will file that. So the point here I am making is that it is not necessary that the person who is giving statement on oath should have a memory of a dictionary that he should remember everything, or that all the documents are made available immediately to be presented to the search party. This is the preliminary statement. Now, the real statement, which has meaning and which can be used against the SSC, is taken maybe after some time when the documents are confronted to the search person, or any information is available with the search party in respect of consequent search. Consequent search is that a search took place, let us say, at the place of a builder. At the place of a builder, they found certain documents which suggested cash payment had been made at the time of booking a flat or purchasing a flat. So immediately before the conclusion of that search, the search party reported to the control room, and the control room made a search warrant in the name of the buyer, and the search party, not the same search party, other authorized officers come knocking at the door of the buyer and confront him with those type of questions. Now, it is a very difficult situation, as I said earlier, because the person who is facing, in any case, is nervous, and the officers leave no stone unturned to make him more nervous, because they are trained to extract information, get confession. Though on paper, instructions of the department from CBDT that no forceful confessional statement should be taken, but this is the normal practice. And here I am reminded of a case of a very famous dweller, Tribhuvan Das Bhimji Javeri of Delhi. A search took place in its premises, which continued for 4 days, and they grilled the persons present, and they insisted on a surrender. And after the surrender, the raid was concluded, I mean, at that point of time, immediately, and the search party left. And the search was with respect to stock. The case went to Delhi Tribunal, and it was held that the confession made in the statement was not maintainable because there was a harassment of the SSC, and for 4 continuous days he was searched, and there was a pressure for him to surrender. But whatever he surrendered, he later on reconciled from his books of account and presented that before the officer. So therefore, the tribunal held that that statement alone, without any corroborative material, could not fasten any tax liability on the assessed. So the point here is that the statement has evidentiary value, but that itself is not sufficient to make an assessment of income from undisclosed sources. The landmark case on this issue is of Delhi High Court in the case of Harjeev Agarwal. Whereas in that case, ultimately, Delhi High Court reversed the order of Delhi ITAT and held that the disclosure made by the SSC in the statement under 132(4), since was corroborated with clinching evidence, the income was to be assessed as income from undisclosed sources. A observation that statement alone cannot fasten any tax liability without any evidentiary or documentary evidence being made available to the assessing officer, or the assessing officer bringing on record any material to justify the addition. Now, I was on this statement. When a person gives a statement, he is supposed to answer the questions it should not give the impression that he is dodging the assessing officer or authorized officer, or that he is trying to await. Now, that is looked upon as a bad precedent by the authorities. So, in that case, the assessee can make a request if he is nervous to give him some time and let the statement be taken place later on. And here, the question of medical aid comes into picture. There is a case where somebody is a heart patient, somebody has started some nervousness because of which he requires medical aid. So the officer is duty bound to provide medical aid. However, it is not something which is to be resorted at as a ruse, as most of the time political leaders do when they are sentenced. They get themselves admitted to a hospital. There also, the courts have been frowning upon this practice, and now the SSC should also not resort to this practice. But if there is a genuine difficulty or there is a genuine medical issue, the officer is required to provide medical aid. And now comes the difficult question. The legal counsel is not available. And once a statement is given to surrender a thing or a confession is made at the time due to pressure, I will not use the word coercion, but actually coercion of the search party, what is the alternative available to the assessee? The alternative available to the assessee is that if he is very clear that whatever confession he has made before the search party is due to pressure and he has sufficient evidence and sufficient documentary support to disprove that confession, he should immediately retract at the first opportunity. You see, even today, the system set up by the British before independence is prevalent that the search party has to send the report to the control room when they reach, and the control room sends a telegraph report. This is known as telegraph report to the CBDT or the member. Those administrative guidelines are still in vogue. So therefore, the assessee should also, in that speed, send a telegram, mail, or whatever he wants after taking advice from his legal counsel and explain the circumstances as to what happened at the time of giving a statement because of which he has to retract. Now, this is again theoretical. Therefore, I am discussing the issue. Most of the time, the confession given once retracted after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months is not accepted. In cases of customs, excise, where the authorities have the power to arrest, there are many cases where a confession is made when the person is under interrogation or under arrest, and he immediately, once he is released, retracts that. In those cases, the retraction is done before a magistrate, and then that has evidentiary value. But in income tax, the facts depend upon case to case. As I explained the case of Bhimdi Javeri, there are other very old cases of other courts. Bhimdi Javeri is the latest case that I just came to my mind, in which the confessional statement was held to be not maintainable because it was under pressure, and that was evident from the fact that ultimately the assessee was able to reconcile the difference in the stock. There was no need for a surrender. Now I am coming to the next connected aspect of statement. I will take the questions whenever the turn comes on these aspects. Is the surrender letter. Now it is very difficult at the time of giving a statement, many a times, for the assessee himself to know as to what are the circumstances or what are the documents that have been taken possession from different premises. A person may be at residence, then he have 4 offices, then offices all over the country, or there may be employees who may be aware, he may not be aware. So it becomes difficult at that point of time to pinpoint as to surrender is represented against which undisclosed item. Is it against stock? Is it against cash? Is it against jewelry? Is it against any documentary evidence of some sale deed, purchase deed found during the course of a search? So all this he comes to know after the statement has been given. So at that point of time, when he gives his statement, he gives a omnibus surrender that I am surrendering 10 crores, I am surrendering 15 crores, or I am surrendering 5 crores. Now he then writes that this surrender covers all leakages in revenue that has come to notice, or they may come to notice later on, with a rider that no penalty may be imposed. Now, this is a standard language which we all are advising and have been advising. But legally, when we write that no penalty may be levied, is not taken cognizance of, because the penalty provisions under section 271 AAB or 271C, as the case may be, become applicable irrespective of the statement, though in some of the cases earlier the courts had been liberal in allowing the deletion of penalty by referring to the statement of the assessee. However, that is legally not valid. Now, what is the role of a surrender letter? What happens that I have given a surrender of 10 crores. At that point of time, I am not aware, I have a group of 20 companies. So I surrender 20 crore rupees, or I have 3 firms, or I have 5 assessees. Now, the point to be noted here is that I am going to surrender, or I ought to surrender only in the name of those assessees against which there is a search warrant. I may have family members against whom there is no search warrant. So it must be noted that for them, no surrender is required, because surrender attracts penalty at the rate of 30% minimum or 60% in the year in which the surrender is made, for which return has not been filed or is not due. All those conditions are there. So therefore, the point to be noted, I am repeating again, is that in case there is a no search warrant in the name of any person, surrender is not required to be made in the hands of that entity. It is more difficult now because of a fresh amendment made in Finance Act 1422, wherein they have said that no loss section 79A has been enacted to state that no loss, unabsorbed depreciation brought forward of the current year will be allowed to be set off against any income determined or undisclosed found on account of a search or survey. So here survey has also been included under section 133A. So this is the point to be noted. Now I was on the surrender letter. As far as surrender letter is concerned, it is an art how to word that, and that each word makes a difference. Now the facts will depend upon case to case. However, the things to be noted and relevant for all the surrender letters are: one, that in whichever assessee's case where a search warrant is there, that ought to be kept in mind, and whatever surrender is made, the name should be given and amount should be given. And also, if I am a partnership firm, I am dealing in cloth, let us say, and I am surrendering a stock, then I have to see that cloth. Why I am giving the example of cloth is because it was fashionable earlier to take the name of cloth because there was no VAT, but now GST is there. So another angle has to be kept in mind is that now the department exchanges information with the other departments of the government, GST or customs wherever applicable, or vice versa. Whatever comes from GST comes to income tax. So they have a regular exchange of information. So one has to be clear that the stock I am dealing with 5 items. So which item I am declaring, because this is required to be done before the completion of the search. I will come to the locker issue after this. What happens is that at the time of giving a surrender letter, it is almost at the fag end of the conclusion of the search, meaning thereby normally, practically, a locker is not opened. If there are 5 lockers, one locker is kept under restraint till the time the final surrender letter is given by the assessee, which is for the benefit of the assessee as well as the department. Because there are instructions from the department also that the surrender should be backed with requisite items. If it is cash, it is very simple. If it is jewelry, again it is quite simple. Though there are questions in jewelry also, that I have a jewelry of 1000 grams. I am filing wealth tax return in 2015 or 14 when wealth tax was in vogue and it was abolished thereafter. So I have a valuation report of 2014, which I have declared in my wealth tax return. However, since I am not filing any wealth tax return because there is no need, the items have undergone a change. That means I have 1000 grams of gold. Now it is 990 or 1050 or 950. But the composition of the items have undergone a change. So there are judgments of Delhi Tribunal also that in such circumstances, the jewelry which has been declared should not be seized. However, the department officials do not most of the time follow this instruction. They follow only the instruction which has been given by the board that 500 gram of jewelry for a married woman, 100 gram for a male, and 250 gram for a unmarried female should not be seized. Beyond that, if there is a difference and it does not match with the wealth tax return if filed or the valuation report or the bills, if you have the bills at that point of time or you can trace the bills after that, they do normally seize that. So I was coming to the surrender letter. Surrender letter should ideally clarify at the beginning that this surrender letter is part of my statement under section 132(4). Therefore, all that I have said is being clarified here by means of this communication, and it should be treated as part of the surrender letter. And in that surrender letter, to the best of the ability, after taking counsel from the consultant, specific surrender should be made. What is stock? What is the cash? What is now, since the scheme of assessment has been undergone a drastic change, that section 148 is going to be applicable for assessment. Now though I'll just come to little bit later on. So therefore, it is very important that the entries in the books of account or cash credits, etc., all those are covered. So how to make a surrender also requires legal competence and consultation with the consultant. I am on the topic now of the lockers. In lockers, what happens? The practical aspect is that a family has two lockers. There are four brothers, parents. So the jewelry of six married women or five or four is lying in those two lockers. But those two lockers may be in the name of parents, may be in the name of two daughter-in-law or two gents. Whatever the case may be, in a joint family, this is quite prevalent. Now, at that point of time, how to approach the questioning by the authorized officer is very important. And by that time, mostly the time is granted to the assessee. As I have said at the beginning, what happens that the authorized officer also knows that he can put under restraint for 60 days and he has time up to 60 days. The assessee also wants some time to go through all those things. So if the situation is something like that, there is a joint family and the jewelry belongs to three persons, the locker is in the name of one, then the person-wise list of jewelry should be prepared on the basis of the belonging of jewelry to each individual. One gents, as I explained, 100 grams is allowed. Unmarried female is 250 grams is allowed, and 500 gram is allowed for a married woman. So all this has to be kept in mind, and then ideally a written communication ought to be kept ready, because at the time when the locker is opened, sometimes the contents are different from what one thinks or what one wants to convey. So at that point of time, if they match, he can give it there and at the spot to clarify that this belongs to this person, and therefore this should not be seized. However, if there is a difference found, because after all, a person who is at home or a lady is not supposed to maintain books of account or keep record of everything. She may not be aware all the time. At that point of time, when a valuer is called at the to value the jewelry, at that point of time, the 500, 250, 100 can be segregated, and the balance then has to be seized. Here again, I will put in a word that it is not sacrosanct that a wealth tax should have been filed or a valuation report should be there, or if in a family there are only three persons, one gents, female and one unmarried female, that I am allowed only 850 grams. There are decided cases of Delhi tribunal also that beyond the 850 grams, in a given example, jewelry should not be seized. One goes by the drawings, living style, customs, etc. If one is able to prove that the jewelry which is found is not undisclosed, it has come through will, or it has come through some gift, then that also at the time when the assessment is done has to be clarified. At the time when appeal proceedings are there, it is possible that that can also be treated as disclosed learning. Now, all this will depend upon case to case. So therefore, the ratio of any case cannot be made applicable to a case which is different from the facts of those cases. However, I have just given you an inkling that it is possible if you are able to explain, as we are able to explain in assessment. So it is better if it is done at the time when the locker is opened, because then there is no charge of an afterthought. Otherwise, it is treated as an afterthought. And once it is treated as an afterthought, the value of explanation is lost. So this was as far as locker is concerned, surrender is concerned, statement is concerned, and the procedure that I said I would like to give shortly. Now I am coming to the assessment of the search cases. Before I begin, I must share with you that the procedure has become very draconian, very unpredictable, and untested, as I said at the beginning. Now, the assessing officer is deemed, now I'm saying deemed, is deemed to have information under section 148 up to 10 years. As per the Finance Act 1421 applicable to 31st March 22 for such years, that deemed information was only for 3 years. Now they have removed the word 3 in explanation 2 to section 148 to state that he will be deemed to have the information to reopen 3 years cases without anything further. As far as cases beyond 3 years are concerned, he will seek the approval of the commissioner as per section 149(1)(b). Now, I don't want to burden the audience with 148 provisions because we all have listened enough to the Supreme Court judgment 148, and I suppose almost the whole audience is aware of the timelines, time barrings, etc. of section 149(1)(b) proviso, etc. The only bottom line is that as far as search is concerned, the deemed information is there, the provisions of section 148A are not applicable. So it gives rise to a very peculiar aspect. Now that aspect is that in section 153A or 153C, the assessment for 6 years or whatever years which were not abated, after excluding that, for abated years, assessments were done simultaneously. Unabated assessments, assessing officers used to pass under 153A. However, because of the judgment of Kabul Chawla and various other judgments, those were struck down if no incriminating material was found by courts, Delhi, Bombay, almost all courts, and now Allahabad also. Earlier Allahabad was against, but a recent judgment has come that Allahabad has also followed Kabul Chawla. But here, in this case, a peculiar situation arises that within the time available under section 149, the assessing officer can choose his own time to give notices under 148 as and when he pleases. He may do it after 3 years, he may do it 4 years. As I said, this is a very dangerous aspect that means the person is always kept hanging. He doesn't know when a notice will come. Suppose a notice is to come for 2016-17 and the information with the officer is that the escapement is more than 50 lakhs. So he can go after today is 22. So he can give the notice up to 25 or so on, or whatever the legal provisions are. I'm just giving an example. So it will keep on moving. So we are not sure when the finality to the assessments will take place, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So this is one aspect which needs to be understood and which has been made very, very difficult for the assessee if this is resorted to, and I am very sure that the assessing officers are likely to adopt this because nobody wants to burden himself or herself. Earlier also, we are aware of the fact that practically the central circle officers used to work till 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. They used to hire outsiders informally to complete the block period under 153A or 158BC. So they are going to jump to it to find out a way that they will do only 2 years and they will leave out for the other 2 years, 3 years, whatever may be for the next officer, as we have seen happening for 148. We are aware that whatever 148 notices have been coming till March 21, majority of them were for 13, 14 and 14, 15, which were getting time barred. It is only after the new section and new procedure was effective from 1/4/21 that 3 years and 10 years started. And here also, the department also gives instructions to only touch those years which get time barred. So that aspect has to be looked into by the department administratively, that it may not create a difficulty for the department as also because if I have surrendered 10 crores and the assessment takes 4 years, then I am liable to not be on the scene. I may get incapacitated or whatever happens. So that also has to be seen. And reversely, now I am coming to the issue of penalty. Under section 271 double B, I am conscious of the time. So I am just taking 5-10 more minutes. I am giving you the overview of the whole provisions, and then whatever questions are required to be asked to the best of my ability, I'll answer them. Now, section 271 double AB. This is a section in which minimum penalty is 30% and otherwise 60%. What is the requirement to be covered under section 271 double AB is that the income is declared or pertains to that year in which the search takes place and the return has not been filed and is not due. But here again, a very difficult proposition has been enacted that the assessee is required to explain the mode and manner of earning that undisclosed income. Now the question is, if the assessee was able to describe or explain the mode and manner, what was the need for him to have it as undisclosed income? So normally what happens if there is undisclosed income, the statement given is that I have undisclosed income from the business of real estate or from sale purchase of food grains or whatever item is. Real estate I said because that is the normal refrain that I have indulged in 2 transactions or 1 transaction or whatever outside the books of account. Now the question is that only describes the manner. the mode, I can't understand how it can be described. So therefore, in such cases, the courts have come to the rescue of the assessee. The courts have been liberal while deleting penalty under section 271 AAB on this issue. Because if the mode and manner is not explained, then the penalty is 60%. Over and above the tax that is due on the surrendered income. So what happens is that the courts have held and they have given the benefit of doubt to the assessee that when in a statement under section 132(4), the assessee has given an answer that I have earned so much undisclosed income from my business of so and so, iron and steel trading or whatever, and the authorized officer thereafter has not posed any further questions or not asked any further questions, then the assessee cannot be expected to do anything more. Now, this is the ratio of the some of the decided cases, but this is also on a very slippery ground. Meaning thereby the courts have taken a liberal view. If they go by the comma, full stop and the rule book, then I think in majority or most of the cases, the penalty would be 60%. Now, coming to penalty under section 271, 1C, now that has been amended to 270A and 271. Now, what is relevant here is that whatever is surrendered for those assessment years where returned income has been filed, assessed, etc., there is no immunity from penalty under section 270A or the new section, and the assessee will have to bear the consequences of the penal provisions. That amendment had been made long ago, but now, as far as new section is concerned, under reporting, etc., the penalty is up to about 200%. And on top of it, in the passing, I must mention that settlement commission has been abolished. So, therefore, earlier, a person who was raided had one window to jump and go to the settlement commission, at least to save prosecution and penalty to the extent possible. But I think with the new provisions, which are to be tested probably in the next 2 years, because for searches taking place after 1421, the assessments have not become time barred and not many cases have been done. It is likely that after 2 years, we'll know the fate, how much the assessee has to pay. It is my estimation that if some 100 rupees is held as undisclosed, he might have to face and pay tax of more than 150% and still not be able to save prosecution. So these are the provisions which have been enacted with the avowed objective, theoretically, to be a deterrent for all those who do not disclose income, who do not file their proper return of income. So here, in a passing, I would like to refer to one small saving grace, which is not meant for raid or survey cases, which is that in case a notice under section 148A comes, then you can go for the updated return, which has been allowed in this Finance Act 22. So this is just incidental because we are on the subject of undisclosed income. So in 148A, if you get the information in the normal course and you decide to file updated return for up to 2 years. That is possible, of course, after payment of additional tax of 25 or 50%, whatever is the applicability at that point of time. I think, Mr. Convener, I would like to close at this point, because otherwise the audience will get bored. So whatever questions they have, I think we'll discuss that, and then during the course of those discussions, we can continue our deliberation. Thank you for the patient listening. Mr. Kanwar, are you able to listen? Very well. मेरी आवाज नहीं जा रही क्या? कितनी देर से नहीं जा रही? तो मैंने पहले बताया, it's a topic which अनम्यूट होगा?
Please confirm if we are audible.
फोन कर दूंगा ठीक है नहीं नॉर्मल और कर दूंगा
Hello. Please.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
So I had given the overview, and I thought I should stop now so that you can ask the relevant questions. It's about 1 hour and 10 minutes. Chalo, I think I will continue for some more time. There is an interesting issue, that is, the department has been repeatedly resorting to searches against professionals, chartered accountants mostly, along with the searches on the assessees or their clients. Well, I have umpteen number of cases which I can state. However, there is a departmental instruction of 30th July 2003, which is addressed to the investigation department, which has directed them that they should avoid the searches on professionals. ठीक है?
Please.
I am just reading the question from Mr. Pavan Kumar. Can gold and jewelry be assumed to be explained in case it is within the limit of 100 gram to 50 gram? And yes, it can be assumed. There is a board circular, very old board circular. Okay. So I was coming on that issue that there is a board instruction to the investigation officers dated 30th July 2003. The relevant point is taxpayers who are professionals of excellence should not be searched without there being compelling evidence and confirmation of substantial tax evasion. So many a times searches are conducted for no reason on hunch. Mostly surveys are what are recommended. But here now survey also are becoming as much rigorous as a search, because in surveys also for 3 years preceding the year of survey, 148 can be resorted to. The only saving grace here is that in such cases, the permission of the commissioner or chief commissioner is required to be obtained for issue of notice under 148. So this is one topic which I thought I can share with you. Now on jewelry, there is one other aspect that jewelry, if somebody wants to get released, there are administrative guidelines that an equivalent amount of cash of the value of jewelry or bank guarantee can be given to the department and the jewelry can be released. And why it is beneficial in case the SSC is able to garner the bank guarantee or the cash is because jewelry, as empirical evidence suggests, is something which appreciates and money does not appreciate. And the value otherwise lying in the safe PD account or whatever is of the income tax department will continue to remain the same which was there at the time of search. So that incidental aspect is also there if somebody wants to get it done. Yes, it will be treated as explained at the time of assessment also. You see, when it is not impounded or when it is not seized, so then it is apparent that at the time of assessment also it will be treated as released, as explained. I think there are not enough questions, then I can take some controversial issues if you want. Okay. I would like to address one more issue, that is of stock. Earlier, before 2003, the stock could also be seized. Now it has been clarified by virtue of an amendment that stock cannot be seized, whether it is of a jeweler, of a trader, or any item of stock cannot be seized. Identification marks can be put or some notings can be done, but the stock cannot be seized. This amendment was made in 2003. Earlier, the stock also could be seized. So this is one aspect which I had not taken during the course of my deliberation, but this is now an amendment in the act. Earlier, there were a lot of litigation on the issue. Now that has been clarified. Now I can take some more issues which are gainful for the knowledge, which is there was a controversy whether a search warrant has to be separate for each person which is searched. So there were conflicting judgments, but in 2007, an amendment was made in the Act with retrospective effect to clarify that a joint search warrant, maybe in the name of 2, 4, 10 persons, is valid, and search will not be treated as invalid on account of the joint search warrant. And it is also clarified there that it will not be treated as body of individuals. Each person or entity will be treated as a separate entity and they can be searched. So this controversy had been there till 2007. Now, another controversy is on the issue of what is the fate of the bank account or the fate of title deeds of a property. Now, provisions of section 281B again are very drastic. The department is empowered to provisionally attach the assets. Now, land and building cannot be seized. So the department resorts to seizure of title deeds, though there is a difference of opinion whether title deeds can also be seized or not. But the department in some cases has resorted to seizure of title deeds of property and then provisionally attach those so that the assessee cannot sell them or part with them without the permission of the department. So this is also one of the issues which has come up, because here again, I have seen most of the cases provisional attachment is being resorted to. And one more issue which I had not deliberated, I can deliberate now, is what happens to the provision which were earlier there under section 153C, that is assessment of a person other than searched person. For example, a search takes place at my place and certain documents pertaining to or belonging to a third person are found. Such person was defined in the Act as other person. So in that case, the assessing officer of the searched person was required to make a satisfaction note to the effect that this document or information or whatever it is belongs to other than the searched person, and hand over those documents, etc., or information to the jurisdictional assessing officer of such other person. Now that requirement has been taken care of. There is no such requirement, and the other person can also be assessed on the basis of information available with the department. There is no requirement of satisfaction note. There were so many cases where the proceedings under section 153C had been quashed on the issue of lack of satisfaction or lack of proper drafting of the satisfaction note, or due to time barring, because there was one other provision that the handing over of the documents, etc., was the date from which the 153C applicability started. However, that also has been dispensed with. So therefore, now the provisions become totally one-sided in favor of the department, and whatever the information department has, and as per the opinion of the assessing officer, it results into statement of income that is more than sufficient for him to reopen the cases. And what is the question?
The assessment will be done.
एक second. Whether the assessment will be done year-wise or not? Sir, this is a question which is untested when I started. It will be year-wise, but when the notice will be issued, that is the question I said. It can take place 1 year later, 2 years later, depending upon the 149 provisions. But it will be year-wise. Because 10 years will be not compulsorily resorted to. It is up to the assessing officer and his thinking about the information that he has in his possession, which suggests there is escapement of income. 50 lakhs, only then, beyond 3 years, he can travel. That these are the normal provisions.
No, in the year of demonstration.
In the year of demonetization, was search and cash was found. These there is a clear bar on adjustment of seized cash against advance tax. That amendment had been made long ago. Earlier, the judicial precedents held that it could be adjusted against advance tax. However, it ought to have been adjusted against self-assessment tax. Since it has not been adjusted, now the only course is to apply to the commissioner and seek remedy under section 132B, which prescribes the law that you have to refund unappropriated cash, and whatever is the demand that has to be taken care of from the seized cash, and if there's surplus, that has to be refunded. I think you are able to understand what I said. Unmuted. ठीक है जी. In the year, what this means that separate notices will be. See, this is as per the provisions of section 148, which will be applicable. So therefore, the separate notices will come.
This is from Atul Kapoor.
Atul ji, am I clear? थक गए ना तुम?
Please continue.
Current demand है उसके लिए.
खत्म?
Very soon, please continue.
One another observation is that since the assessing officer is empowered wherever the escapement of income as per information in his opinion results in 50 lakhs or more, so it can continue up to, let us say, 5 years, 6 years, whatever the case may be. Then the cash seized will be appropriated till such time. So as I said in the beginning, that these provisions have become very draconian procedurally, otherwise also, and unless administrative guidelines are brought, amendment, I don't know, is feasible, but administrative guidelines have to come into place. And for that, the lead has to be taken by the trade and industry, which will not take because otherwise the CBDT thinks only chartered accountants get troubled, the assessees don't get troubled. What will number you taken on? Taken on? Atulji, I have already answered this question when I said that now provisions of section 148 will be applicable. Now, whatever time is stated in 148, if it is 3 years for escapement of income on the basis of information, if it is more than 50 lakhs, so it is up to 10 years. And the officer does not have to seek approval as he has to do under section 148A. He can simply issue a notice on the basis of information that in his opinion there is escapement of income of more than 50 lakhs, and then it can continue. And of course, the cash seized will also be appropriated accordingly. This is what I said, that it has become very difficult because at that point of time, maybe 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 9 years, 10 years, case to case, it will depend. Welcome, welcome.
Please continue.
I have taken up most of the questions in the sense that I try to answer in a manner that all those questions are answered. But if there are practical issues involved other than what I have touched upon, because otherwise more time is required for giving deliberation on 148, because 148 has to be read in great detail, because now the amendments are very straightforward. Explanation 2 to section 148 clearly states that the assessing officer does not need to have information. He is deemed to have information and he can go up to 10 years, depending upon 149(1). That's all. We are continuing. I am not touching upon the provisions of section 153A, since now those are no longer in vogue except for the earlier cases. And those cases also will get time barred, and most of the law had crystallized under section 153. This is the unfortunate aspect. When 158 BC provisions had crystallized, they amended the procedure to make it 153. When 153 provisions have crystallized and most of the issues are now certain, that also has been replaced by 148. And 148 also in a very drastic manner. I personally think the way it is continuing, it is going to lead to a very protracted and a very costly litigation. So the best course as per the department is to accept whatever the officer feels is escapement of income, otherwise face the music. This is what is happening. I can't comment more because it is still work in progress, because most of the cases have not been done. Once they are done, people will know what is the new procedure. Any other question on search and seizure or any other topic? No issue. कोई है क्वेश्चन? हाँ नहीं है,
Query to me.
कोई नहीं है ना? ठीक है. Waste time.
आवाज ही नहीं आ रही. Sir, if any participant has any query, then they can directly ask question to sir.
Sure. Any question on income tax to the best of my ability, even unrelated to search and seizure?
Sir, if any participant has any query, please unmute yourself and you can directly ask question to Satish ji.
कोई है नहीं है. Sure.
Even Satish ji has stated whether related topic or not related topic. Throughout the income tax, अगर आपको लगता है कोई भी क्वेश्चन है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं. बेटर अगर आपको लगता है टॉपिक करंट टॉपिक पे क्वेश्चन है, then it's really good. In case you feel you have any other question from income tax, please unmute yourself and directly ask the question. सतीश जी आपका म्यूट है.
Now it is audible.
Yes sir, perfect sir.
बीच में आप गायब थे ना?
Yes sir, मैं नहीं था एक्चुअली सर. मैं
Connected थे? I think there was some issue. मैंने तो अपने हिसाब से जितना overview देना था दे दिया within 1 hour and 10 minutes. But I think और कोई issue अभी है नहीं. तो
सर अगर आपको लगता है सर कुछ और कवर कर रहा है सर, आप कर सकते हैं सर. वी स्टिल हैव half an hour left sir. If you think so by your own, if you want to take any topic with income tax or related to current topic, और अगर आपको कोई आपका अपना एक्सपीरियंस है कुछ शेयर करना है.
नहीं मैं बता देता हूँ. Whatever I want to share, I can share with you on search itself. I have already touched upon 3 items: lockers, statement, retraction, practical aspects of that. Now, in the search itself, I can give little bit of guidance from my own experience how to approach the assessment proceedings of search, because that itself is also a very important issue. I did not touch upon the procedural aspect of obtaining copies of accounts or the photocopies, etc., and whatever analysis that has to be done on account of that. So that is also equally important to know. It depends from consultant to consultant and the record maintenance of the SSC. So what happens is, at present, the department normally is not resorting to taking any original record, because most of the record, books of account I am talking of, is maintained in the computer disk. So what they are doing is that they are mostly taking a hard disk, and you can get a copy immediately after 2, 3, 4 days. However, the copy is to be given only at the premises of the officer, that means in the department and in the presence of the assessee. So that is one issue. Now the question which is important of practical aspect is that, as I said earlier, a person declares 10 crores on the spur of the moment. And I'm not talking of retraction. I'm talking of the fact that he wants to continue with 10 crores, but at the same time, he is not aware under which head, cash, stock, cash credit, he has to declare that, and under which entity. If he has 20 entities, firms, companies, etc., I am repeating myself again here. As I said earlier, where there is no such warrant in the name of a particular entity, there is no requirement and there is no need to include that entity in the list of surrenders. Surrender letter, which is given later on to clarify. So how to come to conclusion that what is the composition of that? Now for that, one has to take the copies, analyze the records, and it becomes very difficult now since, as I have stated earlier also, the assessing officer is to follow the procedure of 148. So wherever in his opinion, as per information, there is a statement of income of more than 50 lakhs, he can keep on issuing notices even after 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. Now, therefore, the analysis of the documents, papers, and loose papers or whatever is impounded or in the knowledge of the department is very significant. So what I suggest is the better course of action is to, as we do forensic audit in the case of banks, wherever there is NPA. So here the situation is not analogous to NPA, it is much more serious. I can't coin the term forensic tax audit, but a specialized audit should be conducted of all the papers, books of account, and then a surrender letter should be made only there. So this is what we have been resorting to also. We have been deputing our team to find out what are the gray areas, because in the normal routine audit, and mostly we are conducting audit for those entities from the such point of view where we are not the auditors. So we are not to issue any report or we are not to give any report to the department. So this requires a thorough working, and only then surrender letter should be given, because as I said earlier, surrender letter is to be treated as part of 132(4), the statement that you are giving. So therefore one has to be careful. So this is one practical tip that I think one can start implementing, especially in view of the new 148 provisions. And secondly, practically, I am not an expert on that issue, but now wherever cash is found, the department increasingly threatens that they are going to report it to the ED, and PMLA is involved. In some cases, on the basis of the information they have involved also. So in case there is any such possibility, then an expert from PMLA should also be consulted. It is not that I have exposure to income tax, so therefore I can take it for granted that I am aware of the provisions of PMLA also, because of late, whatever searches are taking place, are after proper recce and proper information through the informer or the network of the department. So that will save the trouble later on if the issue goes to the ED. Third, whatever is taken copies of, whatever is the notings, and whatever replies have to be given, they must be given so that once the appraisal report is prepared, one should not shirk the replies and one should not try to avoid, because the appraisal report is the Bible book for the assessing officer. Whatever is stated in the appraisal report, which is prepared by the investigation team, that whatever it contains is required to be looked into and inquired into by the assessing officer. The assessing officer may travel beyond that, but he cannot leave administratively any observation contained in the appraisal report. So the appraisal report should not be taken lightheartedly, that the investigation officer does not have the authority to make assessment or pin down. Whatever conclusion he draws, that is not in the hands of the council or the SSD, but the information should be placed on record so that a right inference could be drawn at the time of assessment, that this is the inference that ought to have been drawn, but however, due to lack of time or charitable remark, could be that because of the lack of understanding, the finding is different. So this appraisal report is not officially allowed to be handed over to the SSC, but informally the councils are able to help in preparation, because the assessing officers, investigation officers, sorry, are not in a position to have in-depth knowledge of the entities which are searched, in the sense the tree of the family is to be given, history of the SSC, and whatever is the allegation in the appraisal report, that must be carefully gone into if it is feasible. Because the main emphasis of the search is on the allegation. Otherwise, whatever else they find is incidental. So therefore, appraisal report is not to be ignored, and whatever is the allegation and whatever depends upon the liaison with the investigation officer, one can get that mold in the right perspective. I am not saying that you can influence him, but he should not make it high-handed in the lack of information or on the lack of understanding. So that is the duty of the counsel who is representing at that point of time to ensure. And in case, one more aspect I want to tell you, that the assessment as per provisions of section 153 was required to be approved by Joint Commissioner or Additional Commissioner under 153D. Now a similar provision has been enacted under section 148B. So at least mercifully one provision has been left untouched, though in a new section. So all the case laws which were relevant for 153D should more or less be relevant. That they should be application of mind. There are certain case laws where the approval under 153D has been struck down, and on that basis the assessment orders have been questioned. So this aspect can be looked into at the time of assessment. And also another issue which is equally important is that when the appraisal report is being prepared, any officer normally centralizes the cases. So if feasible, all those who are not covered in the search warrant or those not directly involved in the transactions, for example, a locker is opened in the name of A and B. B is just for convenience. A joint name locker is there, B is not even filing the return, and there is no content, there is no valuable article or thing or paper which belongs to B. So if it is clarified at the time of appraisal report, it is possible that B may not be covered under the central charge. So this aspect has also to be taken care of wherever that arises. However, there are so many issues and so many aspects which are different from case to case, but all these are depending upon the person who is the investigation officer and the assessee, what facts they have. So this was as far as the appraisal report was concerned and as far as the examination of the material which has been impounded or in the possession of the department is concerned. I can give you live examples that we are witness to a search where the department insisted on a surrender of, let us say, 100 crores, and after the examination of the papers, etc., ultimately it bore down to 10 crores because of the fact that the homework of the assessee and the replies and the material which was furnished during the appraisal, during the investigation proceedings of those window of 60 days after the culmination of the search were sufficiently looked into and all the required documents were furnished and they were not able to pinpoint any concealment of more than 10 crores. So this is the reason why I said in the surrender letter, one has to be very careful, and surrender letter normally can be given within the overall surrender limit in the 132 court statement within the time before the search is concluded. So this is all that I wanted to say about the appraisal report.
There is a question.
There is one question I can take.
Sir, there's a query from Mr. Pavan Kumar ji. In case of search of his client, can AO refer to valuation of immovable property to valuation officer in assessment in case value of property purchased is more than the stamp value?
Expected valuation.
सर ये म्यूट होगा म्यूट
Mute compilation.
Yes, he can refer. The power is given to him, but the point is whether it is more than the stamp value or no, that is not the bar. The power has been given to the, whether after exercise of that power and whatever valuation comes, whether that will be sustained if he makes addition or not, that is a separate question. But per se, legally he has the power.
So there is another question by Naveen Sharma ji, that officer rejected valuation report and make addition by rejecting valuation report. He didn't make reference to valuation officer. Can we contest that rejection and addition made by the officer?
Yes, certainly there are decided cases that the assessing officer is not an expert. So therefore, he ought to have referred to the valuation officer of the department before rejecting the valuation report of the assessee. It can be contested in appellate proceedings.
There is a question from Atul Kapoor ji. Whether the assessment will be done year-wise or a block assessment for 10 years.
I have already answered that, sir,
Okay.
because 148 is year wise.
Yes, sir.
Are yet to be fully appreciated because in practice they have not come into vogue because these are applicable for surgery after 1421. So those cases have not become time barred, but one needs to read them very carefully because, as I said, I again repeat, they are very draconian, very vague in favor of the department, and one keeps on hanging right up to 10 years because the department officer can choose to issue notice after 7 years, 6 years, whenever he wants to. This administrative guidelines have to come.
So there's another query from Pawan Kumar ji. Can gold and jewelry be assumed to be explained in case it is within the limit of 500 gram, 200?
Already answered.
Yes, sir. This I have already answered when you were not on the screen.
Okay, sir. Thank you,
Anyway,
sir.
no problem.
So may I request all the participants again, sir, in case they have any query related to income tax or to the current topic specifically, please unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Satish ji.
We can have another topic.
Yeah, please, sir.
whenever they want.
Please, sir.
No problem. Deliberation was useful. I am thankful to all the listeners for the patient hearing and to the host for giving me the chance to deliberate on a topic. And I must confess, it was a new topic to me also, as far as the procedure under 148 is concerned. And while reading it, I realized that no interaction probably has taken place with the bar or the industry or the association when these provisions have come into force. Because it does not seem to me that anybody has gone through these seriously. When these are implemented, when somebody will face the music, one will know more so since settlement commission has also been abolished. So there is no outlet for any grievance as far as accidental, incidental omission. So anything which the assessing officer believes will lead to escapement of income, he can follow because deemed information he has. I appreciate the feelings of everybody. I hope we'll be able to meet again. Thank you, Nitinji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, sir. And I also thank to all the participants for their patient listening. I once again request in the last, if anybody has any query, else I believe all the topic has been covered very beautifully, and the queries, whatever has been stated, sir has answered all the queries in a very proper manner. And I am thankful to sir on behalf of complete East End CP Study Circle and all the participants who have joined us today. Further, I request all the participants, please unmute yourselves and give a big hand of applause for Satish ji for his wonderful presentation.
Thank you, sir. I tried to restrict myself to the timeline because it can go endlessly and one gets bored as a topic keeps on dragging. And I have not circulated any background material. You have to excuse me for that because we normally don't prepare like a professor for a student, because all what I have deliberated today is based on my practical exposure, experience, and whatever we come across. And the purpose has been to enlighten and share my experience on practical aspects which one faces in the case of a search.
So we are really grateful to you that you have enlightened us with your knowledge and expertise. And we definitely request you once again with a topic, either with the same topic or with a new topic with elaborate coverage. And we are also again thankful to all the participants again. With these words, I'm thanking you again, sir. And Vande Mataram to all the participants. Today's session we are going to end. And thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.